We are so glad to have you here for today's session as a part of our Winter Career Quest series. It's always so exciting to see many of you eager to learn and connect around the career opportunities in cybersecurity. My name is Hong Win, and I'm part of the Careers and Professional Development team here at WGU. And it's absolute pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker, um, someone who's not just made an impact in the cybersecurity field, but also within our WGU community. I'm so excited to welcome in Dennis Chow, the Threat Detection Director at UKG. Dennis is a seasoned IT cybersecurity expert and has a wealth of experience in this ever-evolving landscape. I had the pleasure of meeting Dennis at our Houston alumni event, and it was very easy to see that he's not just a industry leader, but also passionate about empowering the future cybersecurity professionals. Today, Dennis will be sharing on the topic of how to stand out as a cyber candidate. So with that, Dennis, I'm excited to hand things over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. So thank you all for joining and taking some of your afternoon to spend with me. So as mentioned, I want to help you get to a global competitive cyber candidate kind of experience with different employers. And so we'll talk a little bit about that today. I'll give you some background and some meaningful tips on where to get you to a next kind of level up in your candidacy as you go through different employment applications, whether you use a recruiter or not, and what the best approaches are to potentially networking with net new people. So today's agenda is really more about the global landscape. I want you to get a really good feeling and understanding of where we're at in the industry as a whole, especially specifically to cybersecurity. We'll talk about the success matrix a little bit, how you should use value propositioning yourself, how to do some executions in your timeline. So what do you think about as you're continuing forward in your candidacy until you get that next role? And then we'll have some Q&A at the end. In terms of chat, you can also put in your questions ahead of time. We'll queue it up. I may not answer them unless there's a pressing urgent need until we get to the end, because I may answer your questions ahead of time. And I want to keep this more interactive on the Q&A side. So please feel free to have your questions ready to go. No question is a bad question. It just goes unanswered if you don't ask it. Now, a little of my housekeeping is that because I'm at a company that values its employees and values its opinions, I also want you to value my opinion. So my comments are my own and not an official communication or representation from present or past employers. So what does that mean? That means you're going to get a lot of raw material here, and a lot of things that helped me in my anecdotes as I was trying to get into the cybersecurity space, albeit a while back. So basic intro, I'm sure you don't want to hear it again, but why this is relevant, why do you want to hear about someone from me at the director level? I come from the working class beginnings. I've worked in retail and kind of moved my way up between different employers. That being said, I've gone to the Air Force, some KPMG time, EY, RSA, AWS, and now I'm with UKG. There's so many employers I've been at, so many different industries I've been at, and so I want to really get you those collective experiences. Afterwards, feel free to connect me on LinkedIn, ping me. I'm open to answering questions where applicable. And then you can always follow up where my contributions are in the security community space. Sometimes I write some new tools, and so you can keep locked tight on that and in touch. So to get you a better idea of what's going on in the global landscape, why is it so hard for every candidate? It's always been hard for every candidate to get out right after your degree, but why is it so hard now, especially right now in today's time? So I wanted to give data, not just anecdotes of what I was experiencing or what I've been seeing on both the receiving side as a job hunter and the sending side as a job hiring manager and as a hiring team. So as you can see here, the global landscape shows the white collar recession since 2018 all the way through 2024, roughly give or take. And this goes to the quarter 4 side. So even though this is not directly to this month, it's still relatively recent data. And what you're seeing right here is, actually, let me pull the, that's okay. Let me pull the information technology thing. You see a negative growth rate of 27.2%, as well as engineering, while healthcare is growing, albeit some of that being COVID around those time spans. But if you look at it, we're having a hard time, and that's not just you, that's just in the US. Ironically, some people are looking for expat opportunities. They're looking for ways of getting into the industry, maybe a little bit different than what you're accustomed to. And so what I want to show you is that the United States has a negative growth as well in the economic side for cybersecurity and just really anything on the LinkedIn's version of the data set of hiring year over year so far. What we've seen is a negative 9% growth rate in the US, but compared to many other countries, we're not doing too bad. But what does that mean in terms of the total industry? Well, let me get you started with this. It's really all about the mid-level experience is the new entry-level experience. So knowing is half the battle, according to G.I. Joe. I might be showing my age here, but it's all about the idea that your degree is just one portion or strategic part of your entire candidacy. How do you present yourself? How do you have your CV, which means curriculum vitae? Um, and then where do you go from there? So your mid-level expertise is the new entry-level experience for your new candidates. And that's what I see across a lot of hiring managers. It's not for every employer, and it's not certainly not representative of every candidate. Some candidates will get paid more than others, and that's a combination of different things: opportunity, luck, and skill set. Now, your readiness to be a part of this is how you get to the mid-level expertise. And you might be wondering to yourself, what does that really mean? I just got my degree, Dennis. I just went and did all these projects. I got these certifications. But remember, it's one piece of it. So let me show you what else is going to be part of this. Now, in the global landscape, and this is also in the SANS.org survey, as well as that hiring managers are really looking for a combination of different things. A large portion of this is certification-based training or certification coursework, which you have in your WGU experience so far. The other 30% being a formal education, including your bachelor's experience, and then a very small amount being, the graduate degree programs and so forth. And if you break it down right here, this is the vulnerability asset analyst, the information security analyst practitioner, the architect, and the forensic analyst. And you might be wondering to yourself, well, if that's what the survey is offering, what else is going on? And I take you back to the previous slide where we talked about the global growth rate. There's a negative growth going on across lots of different industries, and there's the new kind of feeling that you have to be at mid-level. So these are what is across both entry level, mid-level, and really at the senior level as well, if you look at them, including management. And so what do we do about this? How do we position ourselves? What should we be thinking about when we get the most out of mid-level hiring practitioners? And the valuation is a combination of all the above. So what's going to stand you apart other than having your coursework, your degree, and your certifications is something that we look at in the hiring manager prospect as well. So I've come up with this success matrix. It's really something I thought about it when I was still looking out, getting out of the bachelor's degree experience. And even though I had prior IT experience, I didn't have security experience. And that's something that was the chicken or the egg issue that we found in many different employment situations and opportunities. So for the success matrix, I think for a large portion of you that have not been in IT or have not been in security, um, and I think about where you're probably at. Now, you may not be at this level right here. You could be closer to here, right here, right here. But we want to look at the balanced cybersecurity professional. And so I think what you have here, if you're not already in the space or in a space immediately adjacent to security, is that what you're having is, sorry, apologies about that. What you're having is a combination of aptitude and problem-solving capability and learning capability that you have with your degree, what you're showing us as employers. But you're really right here, right? You have aptitude, but as a hiring manager and as part of a hiring team, both on the individual contributor level and work my way up to leadership, I don't see the rest of it with your resumes. I don't see it with the rest of your candidacy per se, just showing me you have a degree instead of cybersecurity credentials. It shows me that you might have tacit knowledge of skills, right? You could have had some basic projects, you could have passed the certification exam, but remember, all of those are multiple choice. I don't know if you know how to actually build anything, and I also don't know if you have any practical experience. So what is it that I need from you from a cybersecurity perspective of certifications of the actual program and degree experience? I don't know if you have the enterprise level. You might have an idea of what it means, but will I actually let you touch an enterprise or production level firewall that could bring down the network and cause outages and causes for every hour? It could be, for all I know, thousands, if not millions of dollars of revenue, depending on what kind of business this is. And then last in that matrix is really the work ethic and work ethos. You're still someone coming from the street or coming from someone that's unknown, right? And so I don't know what your work ethos really is. We only have roughly 32 minutes to an hour, and maybe even 90 minutes if we were looking at multiple interviews of really trying to get to know you. So trying to find the right balance professional, whether you're in security or not, we're probably judging you based on these four different areas of main concern. Now, every team is different. And I want you to understand that it's not always going to be this case. And so different hiring managers have different styles. I try to be as balanced as possible, but that's not always going to be forward of mind cognizant of every interview or every experience. Your resume may not even make it to human eyes, depending on not only depending on what you put in there, but what else are they looking for? And as a hiring manager, I'm looking for a as balanced as possible, especially from entry level people, um, towards the center. Can you show me skills? Not just the fact that you completed a program. Can you show me actual experience if you apply those skills? And you might be wondering, well, if I don't have any work experience, what am I going to do? We'll get to that in a moment. And can you show me some form of reliability, work ethos, collaboration? And these are things that we value in the side of the hiring management side of our practices, wherever you're going to be at. And I think this is something you can really take back and highlight for your entire programs. So where are you with that? How do you get to that point when we get to a balanced management approach? What is our value proposition? And I'll give you a little bit of the anecdotes that I find different students, regardless if it's WGU, regardless if it's a new graduate or not. Most of the time, I'm getting a message or an email that's unsolicited, and it's your resume attached. It's I can do this. I hope you can hire me, or hey, I saw an opening and please consider me, or please essentially move me at the top of the resume consideration list. The truth is, I'm probably not going to answer you, and I'm probably not going to really consider you any better than what I consider the next person I met off the street. And here's why. I don't know about the last four pieces that we just talked about, right? I don't know what your aptitudes are, your skill sets, your experiences, and your work ethos. And you're also not offering me anything that I don't hear from a lot of people. And you're also not offering me anything that I can really get a good tangible feel of whether I should not to actually open and read your resume. And on top of that, especially in the hiring manager side, we actually see a lot of different fake bot or other kind of phishing and social engineering campaigns. Once we post a job opening, we have lots of different fake resumes coming in, some of them containing malware, some of them not. So out of a safety concern, some of us don't even open some of those. So what should you do to give yourself the best value proposition possible? So you really need to look at it from the hiring manager's point of view. And I'm not saying this for my employer, but I'm saying this for very different levels of employment. Why should I take a chance on you? Why should I give you my time to begin with? Why do you want to connect with me? What is it in for me? Why should I share my network with you if I'm connecting with you? And then some of you have asked, by you, I mean the general public, why should I mentor you? And so these are things that are going on in my head as you communicate forward. I want you to be thinking about that when you first engage. What is your first impression, virtually or in person? Now, in person, you don't have a chance to kind of really consider and think about it. You have to do that preparation ahead of time, but you don't want to come off as if you had a script and you were just reading it off. At the same point, I don't want you to come into LinkedIn as my message unsolicited without a value proposition. So think about what your value proposition could be, right? My time is worth X amount of salary, and per hour, if I'm reading your stuff for about 15 minutes, right, that's a quarter of my hour. You know, am I getting that time back, and am I getting that money back in terms of the practicality of it, right? Because in our world in management, my calendar is full of different meetings. I'm in double bookings, triple bookings sometimes, and I'm not even the highest level of management. I'm not a CISO, I'm not a VP. And so you can imagine other managers and other senior directors at the same kind of level that don't have a lot of time to give to you to begin with. So where are you going to get the best value proposition to start? You can start with I can. Hey, you have an open requisition. I've seen that. I've already submitted my requisition and applied to your thing. Even though you don't know who I am, perhaps I can help you implement this. Or I can think about the news that I saw about your company and how I can help you solve these with my skill sets by analyzing X or in doing it by this day. Or I'm in the middle of a growth period, I'm learning this, and I'm going to finish this project by this. You can track me here at either some sort of social media handle or a combination to your link. And now, what have you done besides go to school, and perhaps you did go back and have a work experience? What did you do beyond your actual portfolio at your skill set? So on your project skill set, some of you have posted your programs or some of your scripts that you've made, but they're really not that applicable to enterprises all the time. Now, if you can show me that it is applicable to a enterprise security program, perhaps you've automated something, perhaps you've made something more reliable, that's what I want to see, right? And that's what you're getting into your portfolio and why we need to talk about additional value added items when you're engaging anyone in the hiring market. And this is not just for myself. Others, H1s, there's F1s, there's so many different international and offshore candidates that are really vying for a minimum amount of openings. This is how you're going to get the top of the pile. You can still engage with us. That's perfectly fine. And if you're not really buying us a coffee or lunch, right, you really need to showcase some of your tools and propositions here. And then, of course, you can actually talk about buying the mill or something. You have to have skin in the game. When you're asking something from me, it shows me that you're not having something in return as skin in the game, other than the fact that I have to spend the time reading your resume. And I'm sorry if that sounds very difficult for some of you, but that's the type of things that I want you to avoid as you're going through these experiences. And that's why perhaps some of you are getting the results and the responses you are getting. So in your value proposition before we get off the slide is don't neglect your hands-on keyboard skill sets. I want to see IT. I want to see cloud experience or skill sets. I want to see scripting. I want to see all these different things that actually apply to our enterprise level sets of needs. You have YouTube now. You have many of different free choices. There's free cloud tiers now that you can always get. And if you got that expired, create another email address and get another free tier. Show me that you can build something. It's very difficult to get in cybersecurity, even at the entry level, when especially since we're expecting mid-level now in today's kind of time frame of skill sets and experiences and these foundational technologies. Tacit knowledge is not enough. You have to show me that you can build the systems, configure the systems, and secure the systems. Otherwise, you're just looking at alerts and hoping that you're going to get a SOC analyst program. And that's not what we want. We want you to be analysts. We want you to be critically thinking about something. We don't want you to be memorizing questions and answers to popular interview questions. That's going to get you only so far. And that's honestly what a lot of different offshore candidates do as well. I want you to be able to critically think through a scenario that's likely to hit an enterprise. And by enterprise, I mean anything over 500 users, really. All right. Your SMBs or your small to medium-sized businesses are not going to have the same level of scale and the same level of needs. So you have to think about it from an enterprise perspective. What do they need? And I know they taught you this in some of your degree programs. You can put it to use using those applicable skill sets when you create something tangible. Advance the slide here. All right, great. So the execution timeline, what does that mean for you? And the reason why we're at this point now, and I call it the modern analyst or modern candidate problem, is because we have really multiple generations of cybersecurity. This was created by me in 2018 or so. For the most part, correct in my forecasting there. You can read more about this in the links below here. And so what you really have is generation 1 of security, and you're closer to generation 4 at this point, or really 3.5. So generation 1 being, it was the Wild West. There was standards and operating procedures, there was policies and all these things that you learn at that time period where it was most relevant. We didn't have stable IT. We sort of had some new network technologies being developed, even though technically you might have learned this in your degree, where DARPA and many of the US DoD projects turned into the internet eventually. the web wasn't made popular into the 90s realistically because of browsers and other limitations. We fast forward to 2010 from 2000s, generation two, it's all about network security. So firewalls, IPSs, VPNs, those are when virtual remote type of connectivity such as this, webinars, was starting to become an actual capability and presence. Now, I also wanted to point out generation 2.5, where IoT and SCADA systems and industrial control systems were really becoming another niche area of study, and it kind of tapered off a little bit because realistically, IoT, even though you can't secure them as well as a normal OS-based endpoint, they're still just part of the day-to-day work. But the way you secure them was not that much different from what you did previously. Now, another 8 years ahead, we get to generation 3, where the AppSec focus was really all about web application security, cloud, knowing the OWASP top 10. I know you know these terms, but you really need to understand that that was the demand at the time for the largest pay scale. And so that was another niche thing that had to become its own practice and own thing. Then fast forward to even really today, we have generation 3.5 and approaching generation 4. We have AI and security integration and approaching R&D for the max payout. So what am I saying when I'm saying max payout? And what does that mean when I'm saying generations of cybersecurity? What I'm saying is that for the same time period, you had to know much less. Today, you're in 2025. You have to know so much more than you did in these kind of eras or in these type of decades when you entered cybersecurity. I'm really showing my age at this point, but I'm showing you that at generation 2 is where I entered in cybersecurity. And so I really needed to know some IT systems administration, network security. Cloud wasn't really a thing, or it was basically colo hosting at the time. There was some AppSec, but no one en masse knew what to do or how to do with it, other than maybe attackers that had better zero-day exploits. When you're starting the cybersecurity journey here, you're really starting at the culmination of all of these different generations and needs together. You probably had a whirlwind experience of this in the WGU program amongst different certification bodies over time. Now remember that that's a certification of your skill sets at a point of time. What are you doing to actually get to the practical enterprise security sense of across all these generational needs that you need? Right. And so that's why you have mid-level requirements for even entry-level times today. And that's why it feels so much harder for you than it was perhaps in the before times. And I wanted to give you the showcase on what that means and how do we really align to that to get you to a better state. Certifications are certainly one portion of it. The CISSP, the EC Council's version, GIAC, if you can afford it. OffSec's got some more affordable things now, edX, Splunk, and Azure. And while all of these certifications are important to have to help you get to the start of the interview process, to help you get over the finish line, and something I feel like that the global market doesn't really do well today, and perhaps some candidates do better than the others. And we hire out of Ireland inside UKG, but we found that particularly candidates that have resumes that have your GitHubs, your blogs, even if you tried and failed at something, but I got to see your logic and why you failed, that you were experimenting with all of these different technologies, that you were trying to learn and get hands-on and very relevant on them, other than having that tacit knowledge. That's going to help me get to a better choice whether I move you forward in the candidacy process or not. Okay, so what do we do about this execution timeline? What do you specifically do, and what do you need to actually have under your belt other than Dennis telling you need more skills? One of the largest interesting things that I saw, and this is anecdotally, I don't have data for this, I find that HR individuals of many different companies look for the CISSP. Now, if you ever looked up what the CISSP is, and the reason why WGU is not offering it in the entry-level program is because that it usually requires the CIS to have 5 years of experience already. It's supposed to be a certification is to attestate what your current skill sets are and to some degree experience are in your career set. For whatever reason there is, globally, I found that the CISSP tends to get you more bites back, more calls from recruiters. And so you may not get your CISSP number, but many enterprises don't really, I wouldn't say they don't care, but they don't stress as much having you that number versus you just having the associate certification level. So if you take the exam, which some people take 6 months to a year, you might get a lot more return on your investment for that $1,000 or whatever the cost is now to study for that certification and maintain it. Once you get your 5 years of actual experience, then someone else will endorse you and you'll get your a full CISSP number. But to get the CISP associate, and some people don't make a distinction, or some employers don't make those distinctions. And sometimes if you're looking for contracting roles, consulting roles, DoD world, or anything like that, they're looking for those magic letters. And while I don't understand why necessarily as a tactical person, it's really a strategic and architectural cert. It does let you show me that you've mastered a wide body of skill sets at a strategic architecture and design level, and that can help position you based on the mid-level skill sets that a lot of us are looking for in tandem. Now, in this 1 year timeline, I'm also showing you what you could do. I'm not saying this is what you should be limited to. I'm just saying this is what is going to help you potentially make yourself a better value proposition as a candidate moving forward. I want you to be able to deploy Active Directory, your own firewall. And I don't mean installing IP tables. I don't mean installing and using a GUI widget. I want you to install something that's on hardware. That's not going to Best Buy and buying a Linksys. That's you open source building something, putting it in as an appliance, either hardware or virtually on your network, and actually trying to treat it like an enterprise program. When you think about enterprise, I want you to think scale. Think about scale. Can Google or Amazon or anyone else in a UKG, can anyone work in a single computer or single firewall configuration? The answer is probably not. There's a cluster. There's ways of making sure that there's high availability. There's sizing. There's all these different things. There's other things like change control, which is not even a technical thing. It's more like a governance thing. As you're positioning yourselves, when you're speaking to people, when you're going ahead and thinking about your resume and how it looks to an employer, I want you to think enterprise. How do my skills and how specifically my technical skills apply and convert to an enterprise format rather than tell me you've done a school project? I want you to also be able to configure and manage switch with VLANs, network attached storage. You can build those. These are all open source tools that you can build through computing hardware or in the cloud today, practically for free or cheap. So there's really no excuse now. This wasn't the case in maybe 20 years ago when I first started. Another set of certifications that I talked about, well, perhaps skill sets I talked about that have certs associated with them, is the AWS Solutions Architect. If you look at it if you go to Indeed.com, these job search engines, you'll find that if you type in the certifications, you can see salary ranges that are typically posted for public facing postings. And that doesn't mean that you're going to get that top 1% of salary, right? There's no question that if you don't have experience, it's going to be hard to justify the top tier salary. But if you aim for the middle, type in these different certifications, CISSP, AWS Solutions Architect, or even some of the skill sets, such as a different, for instance, an open source firewall might be pfSense, OpenSwitch, FreeNAS, right? These are all different tool sets that can help you learn and achieve those hands-on skill sets. And you can even write about them and communicate with this. Same thing with AWS. I like AWS, maybe because it's a bias thing, but and here we use a lot of GCP, and really every major company is multi-cloud. So just pick any cloud. But I typically choose AWS and recommend it for most candidates because it has the most content out there. It's a majorly free tier, at least for 12 months for a lot of it. And then you can, and it's a fairly lower level hanging fruit certification than perhaps the CISP. But it's also very interesting if you learn this type of cloud native services, and particularly securing that, that's going to help you drive yourself forward. Many candidates that come to me today, they come directly from school, they come from a certification program or even a boot camp, and they might have done some projects at home, but they know nothing about cloud. And unfortunately, many employers, especially large employers, have a cloud footprint. You need to understand this, and you need to understand how to secure things between the cloud and on-premise, and in separate workloads as well. We have log analysis automation as well. So how can you deploy SIEM? You've read about it. You probably never deployed it yourself, or if you did, it was a very limited amount. Again, think about scale, enterprise security. Can you use open trial editions to actually get log ingestions? And I'll answer this for now, but for Josh, AWS over Azure, there is no major one. Again, I talked about the content. I found that a lot of content is out there for AWS, and there's a lot of diverse content out there. So that's my anecdote, but you can probably find just as much content for Azure. It's really up to you and really what your target employer is looking for. System hardening is also something that I need all of you to really understand and do. So Linux hardening, Windows hardening is not all about one or another system. You need to do this hands-on. So if you think about Windows, I'm thinking GPO. What do you do? Well, you need to actually deploy Active Directory to actually deploy it enterprise-wide. You can't just do it locally. How do you deploy at scale? How do you apply the CIS benchmark templates? All the stuff you read about, I want you to be able to do. DFIR automation, so you should recognize these acronyms, digital forensics and incident response. Can you do scripting? Can you do with an open source or trial edition of a SOAR? Can you automate something in your house, such as anti-malware alerts to response and containment? How do you isolate a VM? All these practical skills that help you get to the mid-level. Think about these types of projects. I put this in the last portion up here, which is these more advanced concepts, and depending if you have time to do so, it's really secure cloud landing zone using infrastructure as code. And I'm just going to use AWS because I know it more too. But AWS has a concept of control tower that lets you use a GUI. It's perfectly fine to experiment with that, but the mid-level to senior level skill sets needs the infrastructure as code, and understanding Terraform, CloudFormation for AWS. I believe there was something else for GCP, and then we also had Azure, where its version of it. I don't remember what the items were called for their scripting language, but it's all some form of JSON or YAML. And if you build it and you understand how to do so, you can actually automate the deployments of very highly scalable systems, and these are very highly sought after skill sets. Malware analysis is also another one where you're doing more than just deploying something in a sandbox. Any person that you teach can click something, can upload a piece of binary to the sandbox. I'm not looking for that. And by I mean a lot of us hiring managers. What can you do and analyze, interpret the information from the binary without using a cheater tool? And even if you do a cheater tool, like a sandbox, such as Cuckoo Sandbox, VirusTotal is not really a sandbox, it's really a multi-AV engine scanner. Can you give me the information out of it? What do you do from an analyst perspective to give me a value add in a SOC analyst program? Now, finally, writing incident response playbooks, trying your luck there, trying to use best practices. A playbook and a runbook is actually two different definitions that I think candidates also confuse. So look those up yourself. And remember, runbooks are more detailed. So give me the SOP around that. And then finally, if time permits, Gen AI security analysis. There's lots of different frameworks out there. The SAFE framework, SAIF from the Google Cloud team. There's also the new NIST ones that have a risk management framework based on AI. And I want you to think about how you can inject AI, not in terms of cheating. Don't just use Claude Sonnet 3.5 to write your code for you, but also analyze different things to help you seek what you haven't done before. So if you made a script, for instance, and said, how do I make the script more secure? You could have just hard-coded a password inside the script, which is obviously bad practice. But what would you do in the meantime? Well, if you didn't have the experience with the cloud, you would have known that secrets manager would be something you have to pull in dynamically into environment variables. And if you don't understand what I just said, you need to go back and think about how your scripting and programming experience work and how IT systems work before you think about a career in cyber, to be honest with you. And so I want you to take all these different pieces of information and try your best to get an applicable sense. Create projects, use GitHub, it's free. Deploy something, build something, and go ahead and do your best. Even if you don't do well at it, even if I see your imperfections at it, I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to communicate it well. I need you to try something. I need you to at least be accurate to some degree of your analysis of what you've been doing. And that way we have a very different conversation when we start engaging cold, what I call a cold call. So over instant messages, random people coming up to me in conferences, and even in the formal recruiter pipeline, as we discuss how to get your candidacy forward in there. These are things that perhaps not every candidate does. And while you can't be perfect in every one of these, and I give you a 1-year timeline to do so, some people have taken 6 months, some have taken 3 months, some have taken a year. Do what makes sense for you. And it doesn't even have to be in this order. And again, this does not have to be limiting to you. These are things that I think that you need when you're coming to a cybersecurity person. You're going to have someone like me on the back end being your interviewer, especially if you know you're dealing with someone that knows what they're talking about. They're going to start digging into these details. And if you can't do anything besides name off definitions, you're honestly just going to be another vanilla candidate in the pile. All right, so some key takeaways before we get to our Q&A, right? Think about meaningful connections when you're trying to engage employers, right? What is the TLC that you need to do, or tender loving care? That's an American idiom here. You have to maintain a connection. You have to have skin in the game. You can't just come up to somebody and go, can you please be my mentor or give me an opportunity? Again, why? Well, why would I do that? So I know that sounds like a mean thing to interpret, but that's how hiring managers are doing so, and that's why you're not getting perhaps the responses you're getting. It's what you know, who you know, and how you present yourself. So that your value proposition, think about what we talked about for a balanced candidate. And meaningful connections is part of that too. So how you present yourself, do you have skin in the game? Are you willing to put time and effort in? Are you showing me that if I give you my time as a mentor, are you going to execute on anything that I talk about? Or are you going to go off to the abyss because I didn't meet your immediate needs? And so that's what actually burns bridges before you even start the bridge. It's all about the value prop. So think about your modern portfolio. How do you get there? And then also think about how do you get there with your portfolio, modern upscaling. Think about your free projects, right? You have Google, you have searching, you have everything that we didn't have when we first started. But you also have the double-edged sword of now you have everything that's already there. We expect more out of you as a hiring manager. Continue your certifications. Your certifications do not stop with WGU or even CompTIA or whatever it is in your curriculum. You need to get more. You need to be as diverse as possible. You're going to be on that certification treadmill if done right for a while in your career. Go to local conferences. There's SANS events that are free in person to some degree, and B-sides, and many others that are cheap or affordable. I think OWASP has their own as well. I think SmooCon and a few others are also something that some people still do in their regional cities. And then finally, before we get to our Q&A side, accurate representation. Just be honest with yourself and be honest with the person that you're dealing with. No, you do not have the enterprise expertise yet. But if you do, you probably wouldn't be in this webinar. So just make sure that you're trying to think like an enterprise person, but you don't have to tout that you are. Just be honest with yourself, be humble, hungry, and smart. Translate to what you think can be applied to the CIA triad at all times. So remember what that means, confidentiality, integrity, availability. And again, be humble, not meek. Walk through your rationale when you're trying to tell me you want something or that you're trying to convey something. And I've done enough talking, so maybe it's perhaps you listen to some voices here, and Hong, we can go ahead with any of the queued up questions, and I can start
Yep.
with wherever it may come from.
Okay, awesome. So before we move into the Q&A portion, just as a quick reminder, we do ask that you keep questions relevant to the broader topic. Please avoid any questions that are maybe too personal, specific individual situations. And then we do have some questions already here. So a great one from Gigi. I noticed a significant number of cyber positions listing active clearance as requirements. I understand this varies depending on organization, location, data class, etc. Is the industry moving towards this, and is it becoming more of a standard?
I like that one. I will say I've been in and out as a DoD contractor, and especially as a NATO advisor, civilian and military, so veteran as well. Most of those ones are looking for veterans, to be honest with you. And I'm going to be completely honest. I've seen most military contractors, whether they're active clearance or not, um, anywhere from 80 to 120K, even for the most senior people. And so active clearance is something, if you don't have one, it's kind of one of those things where it's unspoken, where they don't really want to hire you, even though they say it's not a requirement. If they say it's a preferred requirement, I wouldn't say don't give in and try to submit to it. I will say that your probability is actually quite low, because the active clearance, the reason why they're paying you that is because they don't want to sponsor it themselves. So they have an active clearance or TS or SAI or any kind of even secret level or even public trust level of clearance, they have to foot the bill. And so if you find a lower paying DoD gig that's not an active clearance type of thing, and it's closer to like 50K, something like that, that's when they kind of try to accept you. So if brand makes sense to you more, and long term, let's say Lockheed Martin's part of your overall strategy for your career, maybe if you can afford, don't go broke or don't starve yourself, not taking a salary you can't afford. Maybe you consider that for a year or two, get your clearance from there, and then move forward from that point. And that's the best advice I could give. And it's really not a candidate's game on that one.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dennis. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or if you'd like to come off mute, you could simply raise your hand and we'll make sure to pass the mic over to you. So I'll give a minute here for folks to drop some questions in the chat. I know you mentioned you've been in the cybersecurity game for some time. What was your first cyber job and how did you get into that?
Oh yeah. Okay. So this goes into the working class situation. So I worked retail, got to IT, and I did the normal thing. I went to school. I also went to the military too, all concurrently. And no one would give me a job, to be honest with you, back in all the way through 2008. And it's because I didn't have security experience or some sort of other certification. That was just the issue at the time. I took a job at a startup called Alert Logic. They're in Houston. I think they're still in Houston. Um, and I took it as a SOC analyst working four by tens, graveyard shifts. And I took a 40K pay hit to be there. So I was an IT specialist at ExxonMobil at the time. And it hurt. It hurt a lot. And so, but I put my 1 year in and it paid itself off in a year and a half later. It was a very humbling job. I'm glad the culture was the way it was. Um, would I ever want to do that again? No. But it paid itself out, and if you keep moving forward, it'll help you with that too. I see some commentaries in there. Should I answer, Hung?
Yes. Yes, yes. A lot of thanks in here. So truly great insight from you today, Dennis. Another one, how do you showcase GRC skills in a portfolio?
Oh, these are some good questions. I love this. GRC skills. This is where I go back to generation one of cybersecurity. Yes, it's still necessary, and yes, there are auditors still out there. That one's harder one because you don't come from that background, but maybe you came from a privacy background, or maybe you come from an admin background, or an auditor, or an assessor background before. You can showcase some of those in the volunteer experience. There's some cyber cares type of organizations that help you out. If you're looking for volunteer experience, Lima Charlie sometimes is a podcast that kind of helps you out with connecting you to those folk. What I would say is if you're trying to go solo on your own and you can't find anyone willing to let you do an assessment with them, there's two kind of aspects of it. There's GRC from the purpose of deploying tools. So find a GRC tool that's free or open source or free trial, and master how to customize it and get those modules going. So that's, if you go GRC technical person. If you go GRC from an assessment type of person, there's a tool that the US CERT team deployed. It was called CSET, CSET, and that is the evaluator's toolkit, and it's actually come a long way. It'll let you go through every framework, and it has a nice abundant set of pre-crafted questions, lets you do some threat modeling in there, and then like it'll let you get a nice report out at the end. So if you're looking for, hey, I want to go into the GRC path instead of going to the SOC analyst path, run the CSET tool, offer a small to medium-sized business to do an assessment for them, a security assessment, all for a framework. If it's retail and they take credit card, there's obviously PCI involved, right? So in that way, it can get you some practice and some practicality, even if it's independent. Good question.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Next one. Hey, Dennis, love the talk. Do you have any specific advice for someone who's been in help desk for some time and looking to make a break in InfoSec? It looks like they've been building their IT skills at work, been taking stretch assignments when possible. Right now, they have the Security Plus and currently studying for the CISSP currently.
That's a tough one. Someone's been busy. Yeah, I think what you're doing is the right thing. I can't guarantee you based on market conditions when that's going to pay off for you. Keep doing that. Find a mentor actually inside the organization and outside the organization. And preferably, even if you're an introvert, suck it up, go have lunch with a director, like someone that has decision-making skill sets and capabilities to help you with your career path, right? You just have to learn to be a little social. You don't have to be really social. You have to be a little social in cybersecurity because of the communication skills. The other thing is perhaps work on projects outside of work. So if you're working with, I'm just going to name it out there, like Microsoft Defender Endpoint or something like that, think about how you can do things outside of work. You may not get paid for it, don't get me wrong, but you still have access to it. Make sure it's cool with your manager before you get on that endeavor. And work with the security team if you can write automation. So if you're using Microsoft Defender for Endpoint and they're having trouble finding new detection capabilities, maybe you write a KQL query to hunt for something that they really wanted that provides a view and you give it back to them. These are how some of these connections are built and formed. And almost every, I imagine if he's working in IT, there's usually a security arm or component, and even if there isn't, offer to kind of help lead the administration piece of it. So if you're in help desk, you're not that far away from a system admin. So what can you do to harden? CIS benchmarks. There's also things like well, I'm an old dude now, so NSA SNAC, and then it might be called something else on the vendor guides now that help you harden the systems. And if you're not doing those and you're making those assessments, I'm bringing back the GRC part, if you're doing the assessments, scanning it using tools, and we're deviating from the best practices of the hardening practice of the guides, find a way to communicate what you should do technically, how you would enact on it, and then communicate that with your leadership. Great initiative, and it'll help you learn the tactical skill sets, hopefully, and during the middle of the business day to get paid for it at the same time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that question. If you do think of a question later on, you can always email us and we'll make sure to get an answer back to you. So I'll just give it another quick minute here. But thank you so much, Dennis. You shared some great insight today, and everyone as well, such engaging conversations in the chat. So we'll go ahead and conclude for today's session. Thank you all for joining us and for engaging so thoughtfully. Dennis, you shared some incredible insights on standing out as a cyber candidate, and you offered actionable advice and sparked meaningful conversation for our community today. We'll be sending out this recording shortly, along with that brief survey. If you could take less than a minute to answer those 2 questions for us, we would greatly value your feedback there. We also like to extend a huge WGU thank you to you, Dennis, for sharing your expertise and inspiring our WGU community with your passion and leadership in cybersecurity. Your insights today have made such an impact to our students and alumni today, and we're very grateful for your time. To everyone who attended, thank you for being here. Don't forget to check out some upcoming sessions and also visit our YouTube channel for these recorded sessions. And we hope to see you at another session soon. With that, I'm wishing everyone a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you, Dennis. Thanks all
Yeah,
attendees. Take
thank you.
care. Bye.